The new life. Tom, why is this topic so important?
Kevin, this is really one of the most encouraging parts of our rescue plan that we've been talking about, because all of us feel this deep struggle in our life between the life we long to live and the life we live. And this gap is a life we long for a fresh start. And one of the great pieces of this story is that God has created a story that we can start new.
Yeah, it's like we want a do-over, right?
Yeah.
We want this new thing to begin, this new life to start. So, Nathan, how have you felt this?
Yeah, well, I mean, just even personally, just wondering, I've been following Jesus for a long time, and change is so subtle and so quiet, and sometimes it feels like, one step forward and two steps back. And so it's easy to lose hope that anything is actually happening, that Jesus is actually doing in me what he promises to do. And then as a pastor, seeing that in others as well, just the way we struggle and we go back to old patterns, old habits, old behaviors, it can be so discouraging.
Tom, I know when you began as a church planner, you moving from college ministry into planting Christ Community, you experienced some discouragement in this area, just of the seeming lack of change in people's lives. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when I was working with college students, they're younger, so you think, well, their immaturity is just because they're younger. But then when I found out, when I work with older adults and mature adults, grown-ups, their life wasn't any different. They hadn't changed, even though they believed in Jesus or knew about the church. They just hadn't really changed. And that causes a sense of dissonance in my heart. And I'm thinking, what am I missing? Can we really change?
So how does the Christian story respond to this tension or this longing that we feel for new life or for a new start?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most hopeful parts of the story, because when we go back to the original story, we know we have this beautiful picture in Genesis of perfect harmony. Everything is integral. Our relationships are all intact. It's a perfect picture. But in Genesis 3, we have this massive disintegration of our relationships and all of life. And what I love about the story is it builds not that God says, okay, we're just going to patch you up and start, patch it up. But the picture is one of starting brand new, and that God's rescue story through Christ coming to this earth and his incarnation and his crucifixion and his resurrection offers us a brand new, fresh start. He wants to give us new creation life like we had in Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah, we see this in Colossians, right? In Colossians 3, in Paul's letter. Talk about that.
Yeah, in Colossians, Paul begins this beautiful chapter in chapter 3 that we have been raised with Christ and we've also died with him. And our life is hidden in Christ and God. That's what he says in verse 3. So you have this wonderful picture of this new creation life that is possible when we embrace the gospel. And this has powerful transforming effects in all of life, including our heart and our physical bodies.
How have you seen this, Nathan?
Well, I love the picture that we see with baptism, right? When we baptize someone, we are participating in that sort of death and resurrection with Christ. That when we're pushed under the water, it's as if the old Nathan, the old me, it's gone, dead, buried, out. And yet when we're pulled up, and just even the way that we talk about that raised with new life, that the life we now have, it doesn't belong to us anymore. That we get to experience even that small picture of what Christ has done with us on the inside through baptism.
How do you think about the ordering of obedience and new life? So order that for me. Help me think about that. Are there any examples in Scripture that maybe point to obedience versus acceptance, God's new life work in us?
Yeah. A very religious way of looking at change says, if I obey, then God will love me. And so we come to him and we say, we've got to clean up all of our junk. We've got to make all the right decisions. We've got to pray the right prayers and all of those kinds of things. And then God will love and accept me. But the beauty of the gospel is that we already have that through faith in Christ, that he already looks at us and we are perfect and whole and beautiful. And then that empowers us to obey. An Old Testament example of this would be that God rescued the people out of Egypt before he gave them the law. In fact, they hardly even knew who he was. Moses comes in and says, hey, follow me and worship this God. And God rescues them in such a miraculous way. And then later on, God says, okay, now I've rescued you. You are my people. Live differently. And let me show you how to do that. And so God gives them the law and empowers.
I love how you said that, because when you see that pattern, you see that God's rescue plan is embedded and accomplished in grace, right? Not in our works. And that grace is opposed to any merit, but it's not opposed to our effort. That effort flows from this grace. And I think that's an important principle. Just like our doing flows from our new being, that he gives us a new life, and then he asks us in his power of His Spirit to live this out in grace in all dimensions of life.
Talk a little bit about that. What's our role? What's the Spirit's role in our transformation?
Yeah, Paul follows that progression in Colossians 3. He reminds us who we are in Christ, our new identity in Christ, our life is hidden in Christ. And then he says, what? Put to death the deeds of your flesh. I mean, put to death, say no to these things, and then live into this life in all relationships. Our marriage, work, and it speaks into every nook and cranny of our life and empowers us to live this new life.
So Nathan, what's one thing or something here that you want to make sure people don't miss in this session?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I think about new life and what Christ has done and the way that we're empowered to change, I mean, I think the image that comes to me so powerfully is this idea of a clean slate and how really insufficient that is. I mean, we want that. We want to start over. I mean, I'd like a clean slate from today. We want that. And sometimes we think that that's what Jesus offers us. He wipes it clean. And
It's pretty early in the morning to already want that clean slate, right?
I know. And we think that that's it, and then we get to start over, and then we fill up the slate again with all of our messes. But what I love with what Christ has done is that He has destroyed the slate. That slate, it no longer exists against us. There's nothing that we could possibly do, and not only that, that we have Jesus' slate of goodness, of righteousness, of that's what's now credited to us. All these good things that He has done belong to me. And when I see that, when I realize that motivates me to change and grow, because to know that I am that loved, that accepted, that adopted into God's family, that I can actually then begin to be this person. And so even as we go back to Colossians, where Paul says, put to death these sins, these deeds that we go to, that I have the power to do that because I know I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to worry about other people's approval or acceptance, because all of that is already given to me. And to feel and to know that life pushes me towards change.